Welcome to the West Devon Audit Committee meeting, Tuesday the 2nd of November. The leader of the council did approach me yesterday and did ask, informed me that the remainder of the council meetings today, they would be having a minute's silence in memory of David Amis MP and also James Brokenshire, who is the Secretary of State for Housing, and asked if we could do the same for audit. So with everyone's agreement, we'll stand for a minute's silence. Thank you. Just before we go into our apologies for absence, it was pointed out to me earlier that Jackson Murray, our external auditor, this is the first time he's actually been to the council offices. He's been an auditor for some time now, and it quite surprised me. But I thought, well, of course, if we've always been on Teams meetings or phone calls or whatever else. So welcome to Tavistock, and but now we know actually what you look like rather than just your face. And okay. So we're going to go on to apologies for absence.
We have no apologies, Chair. Thank you.
Declarations of interest. Members are invited to declare any personal or disclosable pecuniary interests, including the nature and extent of such interests they may have in any items to be considered at this meeting. Has anybody got anything to declare? No, thank you. Item number 3, items requiring urgent attention. There are none. Takes us straight into item number 4, confirmation of the minutes of the meeting held on the 7th of September 2021. Everyone happy that we accept these?
So moved, Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, I've got a copy here, so I shall sign that. Take that later. Right, takes us straight on to item number 5, which is the Grant Thornton Report, Audit Findings Report 2020-21. So we'll hand over to Jackson to take us through this, please.
Thanks very much, Chair. Good morning, everybody. So the first of our 2 reports on the agenda today set out the findings from our financial statements audit. So the first of our 2 responsibilities in respect of the Council's 2021 financial statements. I'll run through the report in a little bit of detail and then invite any questions after the end of that. So if I start on page 5 of the committee pack, the page entitled Headlines, this sets out the summary of our financial statements audit. So we began our work in July 21. It's been another year of fully remote audit, which provides some benefits but also some challenges, as we've discussed previously, and we can discuss that a little bit later as well. I suppose the overall message is, subject to satisfactory final completion steps and the committee approving the draft financial statements that are later on the agenda, I intend to issue an unqualified opinion on the Council's 2021 financial statements, which I will do, if not today, certainly this week, and then those financial statements can be published on the committee's agenda. On the page, headlines here, we're awaiting just a couple of final things before I was able to do that at time of drafting, so I'm pleased to report we've had the assurances from the Devon Pension Fund auditor with no further issues identified as a result of those. And as I said, I just need to finalise some final quality procedures and receipt of the signed documents hopefully later today. I've also concluded that the other information published alongside the financial statements, so key documents like the annual governance statement, they're consistent with our knowledge of the Council, and there's no other issues that we need to report in that letter. So our audit opinion will be an unmodified opinion this year. Over the page, the other part of our responsibilities relate to value for money arrangements. Now, the next report on the committee's agenda goes into detail on value for money arrangements, so I won't say much more than to say satisfied that the council has made proper arrangements for securing economy, efficiency and effectiveness as well. So on the two key areas that we report annually, clean bill of health, so to speak. Not exercised any other statutory powers. There were no objections to the financial statements, so no other statutory powers. I'm unable to formally conclude the audit, and the reason for that is we also have to undertake work on the whole of government accounts return. HM Treasury has yet to issue it's a data collection tool to officers to enable them to complete that. Once that's been completed, we then need to review that and submit assurances back to the National Audit Office. The latest I've certainly heard is that the tool should be available to Lisa, Pauline and the team in December. So as soon as we've got that completed tool, we will do the procedures that we need to do once the audit guidance is released and then certify the closure of the audit. In essence, that doesn't change our opinions on our opinion on the financial statements or our conclusion in respect of value for money, but it does mean that the council can't publish the conclusion notice on its website until I've issued that certificate. So it's a slight difference this year. Around the country, no local government audit certificate will be able to be issued yet because of that same issue, so it's a national issue. The rest of the report then goes into some detail on our work and our findings, so I'll skip through some of the pertinent points. So page 8 of the committee pack sets out the materiality level that we audit to. That remained unchanged from the audit plan that was presented to the committee previously. And then the following pages set out the risks that we identified in our audit plan, again, none of which have changed since that audit plan, but also then the work that we undertook against each of those risks and the conclusions that we've drawn. Pleased to note that there was no issues identified from our journals testing, which is in relation to the risk of management override of controls, a presumed risk at any entity around the world under auditing standards. There were some small disclosure updates, mainly word-based updates to the draft financial statements to make a few of the judgments a bit clearer, but nothing significant to report there. Similarly, no significant findings to report in the valuation of land and buildings or the council's investment properties. The report goes into a bit more detail on that area, as well as, over the page on page 11, the pension fund liability valuation. As we've discussed previously, big numbers, significant estimates, lots of judgment, increasing focus placed on auditors to challenge and understand the methods, the assumptions adopted. So really pleasing to say that we haven't got any issues with the numbers that were reported to us through the draft financial statements. As I said, on page 11, at the time of drafting, we were awaiting the final assurances from the auditor of the Devon Pension Fund, have received those and no further issues to report in that respect. Over the page on page 12, a slight difference to the financial statements this year. As you all know, Council received significant monies in respect of COVID-19 grants, lots of different schemes, lots of different terms, etc. Officers had to consider each individual grant separately and the accounting requirements for those, so whether they're fully recognised through the I&E account, the income and expenditure account, or just recognised as a net position at year end. So we did quite significant testing on the accounting in respect of all of the COVID monies that the council received. No significant issues again noted through that, so we were satisfied that the judgments and the accounting adopted by the council was appropriate. The next few pages talk through in a bit more detail those key estimates. As you can see from page 13 onwards, the assessment is a green, so we're satisfied that the process is appropriate, key assumptions are appropriate. We employ the use of our own experts to provide us with some assurances as well, and all of those ranges or estimates have come in line as we would expect, which is really pleasing to note. And we also note we've reported, we haven't necessarily reported in detail on this previously, but in respect of the minimum revenue provision, which is another key accounting entry and one that actually does impact on council taxpayers because it impacts on the usable reserves of the council. We're satisfied after undertaking some benchmarking that MRP charge is prudent and appropriate as well. Page 17, this links to a recommendation that we've made in Appendix A down at the bottom row there. I think it's fair to say that both the audit team and the finance team spent fairly considerable time trying to obtain and understand a transactional listing from the council's ledger. So we're able to see a summary of all of the income and expenditure on various codes. For our audit testing purposes, we need to go down to a transactional level. That took a lot of manual intervention from the finance team, a huge amount of time from Pauline and Lisa and colleagues to get to that point. Now, at other authorities, we don't necessarily see that much input having to be made. So it can just be a click or two of a button and that listing comes out of the system. So recognising the time it's taken, I think we've made a recommendation there to either speak to the system supplier or other authorities who use the same financial ledger system to understand what's different or what could be done to make that process a lot more efficient. Clearly that will save a lot of finance team time, and I know the finance team have spent a considerable amount of time on the audit, so anything that we can do into future years to make this a more efficient process for both of us can only be a good thing. So as I said, we've made a recommendation on that in Appendix A. The next few pages of the report are areas that we're required to report on under our auditing standards. Again, nothing significant to pull out. I won't mention value for money on this agenda item. I'll move on to that on the next agenda item. Page 22 very briefly sets out the other piece of work that we undertake for the council that we bring to your attention. So we undertake agreed upon procedures on the housing benefit subsidy claim. So that's on behalf of the DWP. We undertake that work annually. We set out our proposed fee and any potential threats and safeguards to our independence as an external auditor. We're satisfied that it doesn't threaten our independence. This is a piece of work that we undertake at all local authorities who administer housing benefit. Briefly through the appendices then, Appendix A sets out that recommendation in respect of the system that I just mentioned, and Appendix B sets out our follow-up of prior year recommendations. Again, really pleasing to note that all 5 of those have a tick next to them, which means we're satisfied that that action has been completed following us making that in the 1920 audit. And then the next 2 pages, so pages 27 and 28, set out some of the adjustments that were made to the financial statement. So the one on page 27 is an item that wasn't adjusted in the final set of financial statements. This has been reported to committee previously. It's a technical accounting classification effectively in the financial statement, so it doesn't affect the usable reserves of the council. Grant Thornton are of the view that this should be classified as something called fair value through profit and loss. The council and their advisors believe it can meet a designation as fair value through other comprehensive income. It's effectively a classification point. We set out some of the numbers there, which are very minor. As I said, it's not been adjusted in the financial statements. That doesn't impact on my audit opinion, but I need to report that to you in advance of you considering the financial statements. And then page 28 sets out some further classification or disclosure changes. Again, all of a pretty minor nature, if I'm honest, and I think to give the committee some assurance, from my point of view and some of the other versions of these reports that I'm presenting to other committees, this is a really, really small list of adjustments and a really minor list of adjustments. So I suppose giving you the assurance that that draft set of accounts that were produced for us back at the end of June were of a really good standard, and there were no significant changes or issues identified as part of the audit. But the audit has taken a long time to get to that stage. Page 30 of the agenda pack sets out our proposed fees, which have been reported previously. The final fee shows as TBC just until we've concluded all of our final work, and we'll report that through to the next committee. Hopefully by that point we'll have been able to issue our whole of government accounts work as well, subject to HM Treasury Guide timetable. And then the final part of this report, Appendix E, sets out the draft wording of the opinion that, as I said, I'll intend to issue today or later this week. So at that point, I will pause and open up for any questions.
Thank you. Very comprehensive, and I'm sure we will have a few questions. It's nice that when an auditor says they'd issue an unqualified opinion on it, so a set of accounts, because I can say this having been an ex-auditor for many years, but then, you know, auditors tend not to give too many compliments, you know, so so just to explain, an unqualified opinion or set of accounts is a good set of accounts, you know, so we should be happy with that one. So, but it would be nice to say these are a good set of accounts, but it doesn't say that, it says it's an unqualified opinion. So, I've got a few questions to start with, if that's right.
Yeah.
And I know to have your hands up because, and I should address them probably to Pauline and to Chris, since I know what I'm going to ask. It's a bit of unfair on Lisa, that's just coming back. But I understand what you said about the pension fund, and we have actually, to make sure we're fully up to speed with that, we have got the Devon pension fund coming in later in the year, September, I think, to explain where they are currently with the pension fund to us. But the one thing you touched upon, and I was a little concerned on earlier, was on page 4 of the agenda pack, page 22 of your report, talks about these manual interventions, and the amount of time being spent on it, and of course, in there's room for errors in the adjustments. I just wondered, looking at Pauline, because she knows I was going to raise this, so she's probably prepared. Where are we with that, and what do we need to do? I think Murray did touch on that bit about talking to other councils and things, but have you got anything you'd like to share with us on that?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, in respect of that, that is something that we've been working on for the last couple of years because we're very conscious that it does take an awful lot of resource to run those reports. Talking to Grant Thornton, it appears that other councils can run those reports very quickly. So we have it on our work plan this year to have a look at how we can run those in future by talking to our software provider, Civica, also to other councils that use our same software to see how they approach it. Because we have to do some manual intervention for things like accruals, which affect the bottom line in terms of the transactions. But obviously for the auditors, they want a complete that hasn't been changed at all. So it might be to do with the way our ledger is set up, but it's something we're going to look at and absolutely work on because it will help us as well as Grant Thornton.
Thank you. My next set of questions probably got the same answer to all of them, really. And it would be COVID, and that's the reason for the delays. But it starts off with this one. It says on page 46 of the agenda pack, page 10 of the report, just talking about improvement recommendations still. It says the council should introduce a performance management framework based upon SMART, the strategic objectives, to ensure delivery of its new corporate plan. And in a way, I was quite surprised we didn't already have that, but I think, Councillor Edmonds, that's in progress, isn't it? Do you want to expand upon to members what we're doing with that?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Yes, it is. The new corporate strategy, the plan for West Devon, that is in the resources delivery plan, most certainly. And I think we acknowledge that the performance management reporting has probably not been as strong as it could have been of late. Having said that, we did report we brought a report on performance to ONS in July, and we're doing so again this month. But certainly there is an action, there's a delivery plan. We are already, officers are building that system, and that will be off the back of the new IT system as well. So we have much more information, which is much more readily available. We'll be reporting online real-time information in the form of dashboards to members, SLT, and they'll be able to interrogate that information whenever they wish. And obviously, we will also report to ONS as well, formally, on performance. So, and also, the Chief Executive has given a commitment as well to make sure that we do have a performance management system in place. I'm hopeful that some of this system will be available to members before the end of the calendar year. There is a lot of work to actually put all that together, but that is ongoing. So I'm confident that we will have a much improved performance management reporting system by the end of the year and certainly into next year.
Thank you, Councillor. Apologies there. I just realised I suddenly looking through my notes, I've jumped ahead of myself onto the next agenda point, though. But then, so go back. Yes, apologies. At least you've answered that from the next one. So, yeah. So, Councillor Renders, you had a question.
Yes, you covered a couple of bits that I wanted to ask about pension, which is good. Yes, brilliant that we've got all green. I like the fact and I like the way it's laid out. What I would have is just, I've got the gentleman's name. Sorry, Jackson. touched on, and it came under page 22, and it was to do with the fact that we'd got the additional fee of £10,000, which was payable because of the fact that we were a council that provided benefits, as I understand it, and it was part or was a requirement by the DWP. My question is, maybe a Lisa question, I don't know. If it's something that's put upon you as part of something that you have to do by the government and it's going to be recurring, is there any way we can claim that back from them, or is that not something that's ever going to be an allowable? You know, if somebody says you must do that, it's all well and good when they're eating into your reserves, isn't it? I'm just wondering whether or not there was a possibility that we could maybe look to claim that back. Perhaps. Just a thought.
Yeah, unfortunately not. It is a statutory audit that we have to have undertaken as we do our main core audit. We don't have to have Grant Thornton provide that. In the past, KPMG have provided that service. But there are efficiencies in that Grant Thornton do all of the housing benefit audits for all of the Devon authorities. So in this particular year, we have gone with Grant Thornton, but the price tends to be around £10,000, no matter who the supplier is. So unfortunately, that is a cost that we have to bear.
So it's quite a new thing then, isn't it?
It's been in place annually.
Or is it?
It's something we do every year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'd missed it last time then because I had noticed it.
Thank you, Chairman. My question relates to page 28. I know we covered this in our last meeting in regards to the debts, and obviously Jackson sort of made it clear that in comparison to other authorities, it sounds like we're doing very well. And I know it's on the hub agenda today. Councillor Edmonds is bringing that forward, I believe. But I think we do need to kind of just reference it here because obviously we want payment for everything that we've delivered, and or we're expected to collect from householders. I think just for the record, perhaps it's more to yourself, Councillor Edmonds. Perhaps you'd like to respond to that. I know it's not terrible, and it's a lot better than it could be. That it could be, because it could have been really dreadful after COVID and so on. But I still, there are still debts, and I just wondered if you'd like to just give us a response of what we're up to, perhaps what you're bringing to Hub this afternoon, because it is relevant, I believe.
Yes, certainly. Thank you, Councillor Ball. Yes, the report you refer to coming to Hub is the debt write-off report covering the first 2 quarters. From memory, I think that's around 60,000. There's only one debt in excess of £5,000, which was an insolvency case, and I think that's 12,000 for that one. So, given circumstances, I think that is a low figure. And I have checked with the debt recovery team. We have fully resumed debt recovery procedures following COVID, obviously. Those were relaxed, which I'm sure you'll appreciate. But we are now fully resumed with those procedures. And the debt write-off is up to date. So I think overall that is a good position. I think if you want to break that down, the council tax collection rate, I think it was 97.3 last year, which compares very favourably with certainly the All England figure and across our peer group of district councils across Devon. So I think that's very much to the credit of our local residents, despite such difficult times, have still been able to pay the council tax debt. Likewise with business rates, slightly lower in terms of the figure reported, but that may be due to how some councils in Devon perhaps report their business rates, so the team are looking at that. Sundry debt, again, from our commercial estates, I think is very low, considering the issues that businesses have been faced with. Thankful for, obviously, the government supporting that, but even though a really tough time. And our current occupancy across the commercial estate is 87.3, which I think is a good figure. And hopefully that will increase as we continue to come out of recovery. Sundry debt, housing benefit recovers, I think that will decline as we move more and more to universal credit, but certainly the team do chase overpayments. So that is ongoing. So I think overall, we've got a very effective debt recovery team, and I think that comes through in the report that's coming to Hub this afternoon.
Thank you. May I come back, Chairman? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Evans. That's really helpful, and I think some of those figures are encouraging. And certainly, I want to be clear. I'm not being critical of the work that's done, but I think obviously when we've got debts, we just need to keep an eye on them and make sure that they continue to be pursued. For the record, Chairman, if it's all right with you, I'd like to thank the debt recovery team for the hard work they've done, especially with the numbers that we've got. After what we've been through over the last few years. So to be clear, it's a thank you for the hard work that they've done.
Well, may I go through you, Chair? Thank you, Councillor Ball. I'm sure that will be much appreciated. And I totally agree with you. We certainly can't afford to lose our debts. It's extremely difficult, as we know, to generate income into the council. It's been incredibly challenging. The last thing we want to happen is to let debt dribble out the back door. That is not a good practice. So I think that's reflected in the team, and I'm sure that will continue with the good procedures that are in place, and those will continue to be monitored to make sure that they are still robust.
Thank you. That is a very historic adjustment that has been on there for a number of years, and that has been addressed. That was addressed in 2021, and that formed part of our revenue monitoring report that we brought to members to inform them that we had addressed that going forward in 2021. So it's no longer an issue, but it did go back a number of years. Yeah, it was actually money back into the council. Yes, absolutely, yes. And we've taken that, yes. Yes, absolutely, it was a software issue from many years ago, but has now been resolved.
Right, with no other questions, we just have to note item number 5. Is everyone happy that we note that? Yeah. Thank you. Item number 6, which I partly started, apologies. Again, the Grant Thornton Report, Auditor's Annual Report 2021. Back to you.
Thanks very much, Chair. I'm happy if you want to present the rest of it as well, carry on. No, so the item 6 is our Auditor's Annual Report. So this is the first time this report will have come in front of a committee. So this is under the new NAO, National Audit Office, Code of Audit Practice. This is a new report starting in 2021. Historically, we would have reported our findings on value for money through the previous agenda item, and we'd have also given a conclusion on value for money arrangements. For this year, there is no conclusion, but we provide a more detailed commentary on a wider range of topics impacting on the council. So historically, generally, we'd have looked at financial sustainability, so the revenue budget and medium-term plans, and not much wider unless there were risks of any significant issues. Now, as it sets out on page 39 of the pack, there's 3 criteria, so improving economy efficiency and effectiveness, governance, and financial sustainability. And the rest of the report sets out our commentary on each of those areas and the sub-criteria set by the National Audit Office. The first of the 3 areas, so improving economy efficiency and effectiveness, we have already begun to talk about this. So in our audit plan that was presented to the Audit Committee, we identified a potential risk of weakness around performance reporting through 2021. And it's important to note this is about arrangements in place in 2021, so up to the end of March 2021. We've undertaken further work in this area, and we've concluded there isn't a significant weakness in respect of performance reporting. We've already heard a response to the improvement recommendation that we have made, one of the improvement recommendations in the work that's underway. I think on our reflection, although there wasn't detailed reporting through all hub committees, we could see other means for reporting performance were put in place during 2021. I think, understandably, arrangements were changed because of COVID-19, and there had to be a focus on other areas during COVID. So we're satisfied that the arrangements in place were appropriate, but we have made an improvement recommendation, which we've already discussed and mentioned. For the other two areas, governance and financial sustainability, we didn't identify any risks of weakness, and from the detailed work that we undertook, we didn't identify any other weaknesses. That being said, against each of those three criteria, we have raised some improvement recommendations, which we pick out throughout the report, and there are management responses against each of those. The way that we'll track those is through subsequent reporting, so either through our progress reporting to Audit Committee throughout the year, and we'll formally follow those up again next year in our auditor's annual report to conclude whether we consider those to be closed. So from page 42 onwards, 42 of the agenda pack, we set out some of that detailed commentary on the various areas on improving economy, efficiency, effectiveness. I'm not proposing to go through all of these areas in significant detail, but obviously happy to take any comments or questions on any of the areas. Page 43 sets out the judgment in respect of the performance reporting, given that was the one risk or potential risk that we identified in our audit plan. Page 44 sets out some of the benchmarking that we undertook using some of our internal information, setting out some areas where it appears potentially the council has higher spend than other district councils, and we set out some of the reasons for that, so understanding why. In a normal year, and I'll probably say that a few times through this report, the council would have undertaken more benchmarking, but again, that was one area where it was quite difficult to benchmark against other authorities given the changes in various metrics due to COVID, and similarly the time and resource was placed towards COVID recovery rather than necessarily that area. On page 45 on data quality, I'll just note that we haven't raised any further recommendations in respect of data quality. We noted internal audit recommendations in respect of this area, so we haven't sought to replicate those. We've considered those and don't consider those in themselves to be a significant weakness for our work and our value for money work, but we do note those and we'll consider and follow up any follow-up from internal audit subsequently on those areas. The other improvement recommendation we made in this area of the report related to the Devon district procurement strategy and ensuring that was reviewed on a regular basis. We identified that the intention was that it would be reviewed quarterly, is our understanding, but that hadn't happened yet, so we'll be making a similar recommendation at all other Devon districts who are part of that procurement strategy. The governance area sets out some of the key governance frameworks, so managing and assessing risks, so risk management, strategy frameworks, etc. We note internal audit, again, due to being diverted, because that word COVID, didn't complete their full programme, but we're satisfied that they completed sufficient work to be able to consider that they could issue an annual opinion, and they did complete around 70% of their work programme. We haven't identified any significant weaknesses in respect of internal audit work or risk management work, and we also set out some detail on budgetary control and also the amended budget in 2021 that was required due to ongoing COVID issues. The improvement recommendations made in respect of governance are set out from page 51 onwards. So the first concerns capital budget monitoring. And again, from our view of other authorities, it's sometimes a bit easier to understand the full life of the project and the in-year capital budget and where that capital spend fell to. So we've made a recommendation in respect of capital reporting. We've also made a recommendation. We're satisfied that new staff coming into the council are aware of all the relevant policies and particularly the code of conduct. Good practice would be that long-standing members of staff, there's some either annualised training or ad hoc training or refresher courses just to ensure that people maintain an awareness of their responsibilities in respect of the code of conduct. And also the whistleblowing policy hadn't been updated for a little while, so we've recommended that that's reviewed and brought up to date to ensure that that's still in line with best practice and all relevant regulations. The final section then concerns financial sustainability, so that starts on page 54 of the agenda pack. We note there, and as you'll be aware, the Council delivered a small underspend in its draft accounts, which is, again, given COVID-19 and some of the uncertainty and the various expenditures that were required during the year, another great achievement. We also set out some reserves analysis on page 54, which is reserves as a percentage of net expenditure. So as you can see, the Council are pretty much middle of the pack there. So as it goes with the reserves, sometimes it's good to be top or bottom of the list. Reserves is probably quite good to be in the middle of the pack, I would suggest. So hopefully gives you some assurance there around the level of the reserves that the Council holds. Over the page on page 55 sets out total reserves. Now, the Council does show right down at the bottom there. It's important to note that this doesn't necessarily take into account the size of the Council, so there'll be some much larger districts which are much further to the right, but that percentage graph is a much more, it's a better way to, I suppose, benchmark where you are compared to other organisations. Again, no significant issues raised in respect to financial planning, budgets, medium-term financial strategy, or savings, although we've made an improvement recommendation just around monitoring progress against saving plans and reporting that through the monitoring reports to members on a regular basis throughout the year. Final thing I'll say, so page 58 and 59, I've already used the word COVID quite a bit. I think it would be remiss of us not to reflect on the arrangements put in place for COVID-19, some of which had to be stood up at very short notice and fairly disruptive to all of our lives. So we set out some, against each of those three criteria, some of the changes that the Council made throughout the year. Again, no issues noted and some areas of good practice there, I think, that the Council implemented early on. It was a great test of kind of disaster recovery and other plans that the Council had in place. So I won't say any more, but again, welcome any comments or questions on that report.
Thank you. Quite comprehensive. A lot of it comes back down to regular reviews, and so I think I've got a few questions which I've continued from my last list. But actually, what I'll do is I'll give them all at the same time. I think I'm looking at Pauline and Councillor Edmonds because they're the ones that would be pointing out. But I already raised a question about SMART, and you've answered that one about the strategic delivery of the new corporate plan. But just coming through a few things very quickly on the improvement recommendations. This Council should I'll give you all the questions at once. The Council should review progress against action set out in the Devon District's procurement strategy. So that's one to consider. Then there's also, the question is, why aren't we doing some of these things? And I know the answer is going to be COVID to all of them. The Council should improve the performance reporting on its capital programme by clearly reporting spend against profile budget. Again, why haven't we done this? What are we doing about it? The Council should have an agreed approach by ensuring staff maintain an awareness and understanding of the obligations relating to the Council's code of conduct. And Jackson did touch upon that. And in some ways, that's quite an easy one to deal with. You know, just send it out to everybody, all members of staff and councillors. Make sure we read it, sign it, and send it back. You know, that one we could deal with very quickly, isn't it? Then, I've got a couple more. The Council should review its whistleblowing policy annually and update as necessary. And I think that's quite an important one, really. I know things haven't happened because of COVID. We've been prioritising our time elsewhere, which is rightly so, because it's to survive. But obviously, whistleblowing is very key in any business, and certainly even in the Council, making sure we're all up to speed on that one. And then finally, what's my final one? Oh yes, the Council should monitor progress against its savings plans to elected members on a regular basis throughout the year, including the year and positions. So is it possible to give us some, either one of you or both of you, to give us some feedback on that, where we are, what we're doing? And I know you're presenting this afternoon to Hub, Chris, so you're probably got up on this sort of matter, so you're probably quite up to speed on it.
Well, may I start at the top of the list there with the Devon districts, the procurement. And I refer again to the plan for West Devon, our new corporate strategy, and procurement is certainly one of the action points in the delivery plan. What we're looking to do there is to buy more locally, which would seem a very good thing to do, and hopefully perhaps in the process to also save money as well. So there'll be a win-win situation. But as a result of that work, that will obviously mean that we will need to work far more closely with our district colleagues. So I think that will obviously mean that we'll be liaising and reviewing our arrangement with the Devon District Procurement as we progress this initiative. Obviously, it's really important for the council if we can save money through our procurement process, and obviously certainly advantageous for the wider community and businesses if we're able to spend a lot of that money as close to home as possible. So I think that will naturally fall within this initiative, and hopefully that will satisfy the audit requirement.
Thank you. Chair, in respect of capital programme, we will profile the capital budget so we see the monitor of the actual spend for the year compared to the budget for the year, rather than the budget for the whole capital project. We'll hopefully do that for the next reports, which will be coming to Hub next month on the 7th of December. Time is quite short, so we will do our best to get them profiled, but if not, it will absolutely be done for the next report, which we'll bring to Hub. In terms of code of conduct and whistleblowing, absolutely, that will now be an annual review, and we will ask all staff to review and also confirm they've understood the code of conduct and the whistleblowing policy every year. So that will be a requirement, and I think we'll be able to do that through our new payroll and HR system that we're in the process of purchasing. So that will be a good positive move. And finally, in terms of the savings appendix for the revenue monitoring report, we did do that at the beginning of last year, but mainly due to the length of the report, because of COVID, there were so many variations, we felt it was more prudent not to include it, but we've reinstated that appendix on savings for this year's revenue monitoring report, so that it has been reinstated. The only thing I would say is that those savings are reported as part of the main report, so it wouldn't be that we would have omitted them altogether. It just perhaps wouldn't have been quite so transparent because they wouldn't have been a separate appendix. They would have just been included as part of the main report.
Thank you. Just thinking about the whistleblowing for a moment, looking at Jackson now, would that also include councillors to be aware of that? It would. Fine, thank you very much. Councillor Ball.
Thank you, Chairman. Just one question or a point, really. And I think it links back to Councillor Edmonds' comments earlier on when you brought up the question ahead of time, Chairman. Page 39, which is the overview from the auditors, which shows the three sort of areas of the criteria: improving economy, governance, financial sustainability, and obviously findings, are amber on all three. Now I know that the report goes into more detail on each of those verbally, but I think my question to you, Councillor Edmonds, I think, does this link back to the SMART targets that we were talking about earlier on and the potential dashboards that we'll be able to actually drill down on these points in a bit more as members as we start to go? Because I think, if you glance at those points, it's quite broad, isn't it, those three boxes? And as I say, I know it goes into detail in the report, but as an ongoing thing for monitoring, does it link back to what you started to share about earlier on?
Well, as I'm sure you're aware, the corporate plan is a very broad document, so I'd be confident that through those 8 themes that this would be picked up within those, and certainly I think we'll do some work to make sure that they are fully covered. But I would be very confident, due to the comprehensive nature of the plan and the delivery plans, that this will be addressed through following the corporate plan and the monitoring of the delivery plans, and also, as I said, the KPI that will be brought forward. I think it's to Hub quite soon. Again, we'll be able to test that. Members will be able to look at those and perhaps satisfy themselves that that is addressing the points raised here.
Thank you. I think that's a yes. Thank you, Chairman.
Yes, yes.
Any other questions? Councillor Richards?
Is this the time? Am I on? I were. Okay. Just to, okay, we've got to go through actually some of the points and maybe questions from the sort of comprehensive notes in support here. I've got a few questions. One is page 58. We supported the Fusion Leisure contract in 2021 by 435,000. That's quite significant out of a net budget of about 7.5 million. Is there any auditor's opinion on that? I noted there wasn't, and it's just a comment. It's probably one, if there isn't, maybe there should be, and maybe we should be looking at that for an external opinion of what we are doing in terms of supporting that, and that may be a recommendation that comes forward from this committee that we do look at it, because in COVID we felt we needed to support, but I for one wouldn't mind an auditor's opinion on because then I think they could do due diligence on Fusion, things that we probably as a council maybe not be able to do, or we should be doing independent of the council, because we don't have an auditor doesn't have a contract with them. So that's a comment, and I wouldn't mind. I don't know what other members think about that, but I think that yes, it will cost, but I think that's something that's definitely worth doing, because we still have an arrangement with them going on. So I would perhaps appreciate that. Other questions are I think it's page 98, Seymour Lotto. All we've got is a couple of lines on Seymour Lotto. What is there any details on that? How much income's it raised? What's the cost? And is there any profit on that? I just don't see anything. It may have been brought to a report at another committee, but yeah, what's the point of it if it isn't raising income or of some benefit for the council? But there isn't much commentary on it. It probably isn't particularly exciting, especially in COVID as well. So I'd understand that, but I'd appreciate some depth into that and answers in the figures. Just to other note, I thought the property valuation figure, which I thought might fall through the floor, has actually gone up by about 0.8 of a million, or their revenues are down. So, and in terms of an asset portfolio, which I panicked after, especially reading the Sunday Times about Slough and Spelthorne in particular, their councils, and I was always slightly fearful. I rest at ease with that one. Another note is is there any comment on our in the interest and investment account? We've gone from 105 predicted to £37,000, and that's £68,000 down. I'm sure that's a COVID figure, and I don't know if Jackson would, or Lisa, or anyone would comment on that. I mean, it was a difficult year as well, and if you revalued it now, where the stock market's up higher, I'm sure it's bounced back. And the other point is one of particular concern to us is the pension statement. That has the pension valuation has significantly worsened. I think it was about 33% down. And I did note, and this is probably for another committee or when we get the pension people in, is that they seem to have, in a year when UK equities have gone up and international ones haven't, they seem to have moved 43 to 50. Gone from 43% of overseas equities in 20 to 52%. Probably not the best, but I don't know that the best time to put your money in overseas equities stay in the UK. But that was just a note, and it was just a bit concerning. So I don't know if Jackson has a comment on that. Probably not on the intricacies of where they're sticking their money, but also the worrying pension shortfall, because it is really, really material. It's that sort of amount is nearly our 55% of our budget in a year. So those are my comments. So the Seymour Lotto, probably our income, and also the pension liability. And can I make a couple of points in terms of when we do get the reports, if we do these next year? We report on page 158 the salary increases of the senior members, what they've gone up to. It would be interesting to have a column year on year that totals it up of what the percentage increases are in salary and also the pensions increase. And also page 200, we've got a list of council tax, we've got a list of properties in each band. Again, that would be really helpful to have a percentage of properties in each band. If we just list them, you can probably work it out, but it would just be helpful in the report. There's quite a lot of questions there. So, yeah, to sum up, it's Seymour Lottery, the investment fund and pension, really, for comment. And also the significant one is Fusion.
Okay, just before we go on to that, Councillor Renders is waving frantically. Were you adding to that, were you? Yeah, right. So we're sort of looking for an auditor's view or opinion on the Fusion, and Seymour, and also whether Lisa or Pauline want to come in and answer these questions that have been raised. Who would like to start? Jackson. Okay, Jackson's going to go. No.
So yeah, I'm happy to go first. A couple of those I might need to hand over to Lisa or Pauline to get their comment on. So if I start at the top with the leisure question, you're right, there isn't an opinion, and there's probably a reason for that, in that it's not probably appropriate for us as your external auditor looking at the numbers in the financial statements to also then do a separate piece of almost advisory work on was that the correct decision or not. So we don't give an opinion on that. In terms of our value for money work, we're looking at the adequacy of arrangements. So in terms of the decision that was eventually made, did that go through relevant governance committee frameworks, etc.? Was the information provided to the decision makers, to yourselves, correct? Was it fair? Were you able to make an informed decision? I suppose on that point, sitting in a number of committees and working with a number of local authorities, I suppose that the other wider context is this has happened in a number of, well, effectively every local authority that has some sort of leisure provision. There was obviously some government money made available, not a huge amount, and that was distributed under a funding mechanism. But there have been shortfalls at every other local authority as well. And I think it ultimately comes to the decision of, as a council, do you want to fund that leisure provision or not? I suppose the wider context is the majority, if not all, that I've worked with have done that. But that you're right to ask the question of is that a sensible use of money or not? So I don't know, Lisa and Pauline may also want to comment on that one. Just picking up another couple of your points quickly. I think I'll need Lisa to answer Seymour Lotto. On the investment property, the valuations, absolutely, they did increase. I think a number of us were fairly concerned at some point this year and last year. So we kicked the tires quite a lot on that, and some of the assumptions that were employed. The council actually employs an external valuer to look at its investment portfolio, which again gives some additional assurance over those valuations. We consider that the assumptions are appropriate, and actually the revenue streams in terms of rental income have maintained throughout COVID at a reasonable level. That links to interest and income. Again, that may be one for Lisa. I know that the council has its treasury advisors who will look to advise on the best places to put investment. I mean, as we all know, for our individual monies as well, investment aren't great at the moment. I know next on the agenda after the accounts is the Treasury Management report as well, which Lisa may go into a little bit more detail there around benchmark returns, what's been delivered, and what the budget for those was. The final one I'll comment on then is the pension valuation. So you're right that the liability at the balance sheet has increased fairly significantly. I think that the key for the council and the key thing for the council's finances is the triennial valuation that happens every 3 years, because that's really what sets the employer contribution rates and any deficit recovery payments that the council has to meet, because those do impact on the money that you've got to spend. The liability at the balance sheet date has to be there because accounting standards say it has to be there. it's increased fairly significantly, but actually money out the door of the council is the actuary every three years saying these are the contributions you need to be able to continue that. So that's the key element there. I know you've mentioned previously that the pension fund are coming to do a session. They also have their own investment advisors. So I suppose in terms of the portfolio mix that they're looking at, that's potentially one for them and their investment advisors. Hopefully that's helpful. I might pass over to Lisa if that's okay to pick up and any other points on that.
Thank you, Jackson. Yes, so I'll pick them up in similar sort of order. So as Jackson has said with regards to the pensions, the key thing really is that actuarial valuation, which is done every 3 years, because that determines the amount of cash that we have to pay in employers' contributions. Actually, our employers' contributions actually went down the last time that revaluation was done, and that's because we had previously had quite a long deficit recovery period, and we were able to keep that deficit recovery period to 17 years and actually reduce the amount we were paying into the pension fund in terms of employers' contributions. That valuation is due to be done again in 2022. It takes nearly a year for that to feed through into the next set of employer contributions. So that next valuation will start affecting contributions from 23-24 onwards. So we will need to look and see where we think those contributions are going for 23-24. I think there may be a small increase. I attended the Devon Pension Fund annual meeting, I think it was 2 weeks ago, which was online, and they were saying there that they think there may be a small increase overall, but nothing significant. We will be inviting a representative of Devon County Pension Fund to come and present to us. That'll either be the December meeting that hopefully we'll arrange a date for today, or the March meeting. March may be a better time to do it because that will then link in with when they'll start doing their work on the next actuarial valuation. So March may be a good time to go for. But as Jackson said, that the liability on the balance sheet, it is just a notional figure for us. It doesn't impact on our sort of cash out the door. It really is that triannual valuation, which is the key one. In terms of leisure, there is a very comprehensive report on this afternoon's hub committee agenda. We did pay 435,000 out of our reserves. So at different points in the financial year last year, we brought reports to members asking for that support. There was some work done nationally through the LGA around leisure, and I think that informed some of the work and the lobbying that went to MPs and the government around a national lottery fund. That we were successful in getting sort of about 80,000 out of that fund, or just around 90,000. Then we passported that money onto our leisure provider. I'm not sure there is a remit for an external auditor, as Jackson has said, in terms of doing some sort of external review of that. I don't think that falls within their terms of reference. If the council wanted to commission some sort of independent work like that, as I say, work was commissioned nationally through the LGA, and the sorts of sums that the council was paying in support of our leisure providers was very consistent to pictures we were seeing nationally, and indeed some of the councils, I would say, have probably had a lot higher costs, because in some instances they were either having to take their leisure service back in-house, or they were having to forgo their management fee. So, yeah, I think there is a comprehensive report for members this afternoon that talks about the wider issues on that. But clearly that's a decision for members, really, if you feel you want any further work done. But work was done nationally, and we also did work with the other clients of our leisure provider as well. So I think that probably a thorough amount of work has been done in that area. With regards to the Seymour Lotto, I may hand over to Mr. Hawke, who luckily we have in the room to give us some stats on that. Once I go on, I'll complete some of the other points first. But thank you, Neil, because I know you'll have those figures to hand. In terms of Treasury Management, yes, we have got a report on this afternoon's agenda. Clearly, bank rate, for very good reasons, did go to an all-historic low of 0.1% in the year of the pandemic. And even though we did only achieve 37,000 in investment income, but we were below the budget of 105,000, but we were still 0.05 above the benchmark, the rate which is called the SONIA rate, which is the Sterling Overnight Interbank Average Rate. So that's what we benchmark ourselves against. For very good reasons, we didn't tie our cash up. We didn't put it into 3, 6 or 9 month maturities. We were worried about cash flow, especially in the first few months around April, May time. And the big thing we were worried about was council tax income, because we didn't know what payment profiles we were going to get in terms of council tax income. And obviously we're collecting on behalf of the county, the fire and the police. So our actual income level in terms of council tax cash flow was around 40 million. And we were worried about, the payment profiles of that 40 to 45 million. So we didn't tie our cash up. We kept it very short. We kept it really month by month. We were tracking it. But the downside of keeping your money very short is that you hardly get any return. But the key thing for us was make sure we don't run out of money, make sure we don't run out of cash flow. But that does have the downside of if you can't tie your cash up for sort of 6-9 months, and therefore you don't get high rate of interest on that. In terms of some of the other points, in terms of investment properties, yes, there has been a lot of press around Slough and Spelthorne, and I think for me the key around that is proportionality. It's having proportional debt to the size of your authority and the size of your budget. There is a consultation at the moment out from, in terms of the Treasury Management codes that we will need to adopt for next March. There will be a key focus in those reports around proportionality. There will be a consultation response which I'll draft by the middle of November. But CITFA and the Prudential Code, they are tightening up on, and I think probably the auditors are doing more work on, is your debt proportional to the size of your authority? And for me, it is all about that proportionality. We will have a report on the council's investment properties coming to the next audit committee. The valuation of those investment properties has gone up, so there's been capital appreciation of 800,000. And again, the rental income that we've got from that portfolio has been very good. So that has held up very well, particularly during the year that we've just had. I think those are probably all the points. Apologies if I've missed any, but perhaps Mr. Hawke could just give an update on Seymour Lotto. Thank you, Neil.
Before Mr. Hawke joins us, actually, at the last meeting, we did actually say about Seymour, we were going to ask the comms team to give it a push again, weren't we? And I know Kathy.
Yes, and
Kathy
I
wasn't
think
here, were you? So,
I think probably an update did go out in the members' bulletin.
No, I just wondered about, because we've got all our social media sites for
yes.
West Devon. It'd be good actually if they can start pushing Lotto as well, because I think it's probably gone out of people's minds, isn't it? Or has it?
Okay, thank you, members. So yes, since its launch in 2018, the Seymour Lotto has raised £75,000 for good causes across Southampton, West Devon, or West Devon and Southampton. That's supported 103 good causes currently, so 103 good causes currently registered, and 850 players of the Seymour Lotto. So that's averaged out about £26,000 a year that's raised. In terms of a profit from the Lotto, it's a community lottery, and as such, we're not able to make a profit as such. But what we do get, the way the ticket sales are split out, so for each £1 ticket that's sold, 50p goes to the good cause, 10p goes to a central pot which sits with the council, which enables us to support other good causes, which we currently do through crowdfund. So we reallocate that and then contribute to good causes in West Devon through crowdfund. The remaining 40p is split, 20p for prizes and 20p goes to our lottery management company. So it doesn't cost the council anything to run because Gatherwell, who's our lottery provider, carry out the majority of the management for us. There's some minor admin activities that Lisa and myself have to undertake, but that's generally once or twice a year. In terms of the publicity of it, we've got a campaign proposed for the winter months to really promote the Seymour Lotto and drive players. I mean, we carried out a promotion in September, and we did see a spike in ticket sales. I think we got another 20 tickets per week just by promoting it through September. So we're very keen that we focus on promoting it over the coming months because it's a good way of our community groups getting a sort of, it might not be a massive amount of income, but a small amount of income for operating costs. There's lots of grants available for community groups to sort of set up out there, but actually if they want a steady income stream to support their running costs, Seymour Lotto is a good way to go. There we go, that's my sales pitch done.
Thank you on that. Can I come back? Yes, so raised about 76. We get 10p of that, so it's about £7,500 over a few years, but there's no cost to us. That's what you're saying, apart from a bit of administration time. Yeah, I think that's fine. You know, it's not huge, but you know, if there's a bit of money, and then they can raise other money on it. But yes, probably a good idea to put a bit of organic social media behind it to up it. But you only get 20p back in the pound if you play it.
Sorry, the 20p goes into a pot, a prize pot. So that builds up the prize pot, and it goes in. Gatherwell, our organiser, they have a pot that sits nationally.
Sure, I'm sure there's
so
probably.
So it's all drawn down. So we haven't got a tiny prize pot. There's a significant prize pot there, but it's a national prize pot that we draw on for any of our players that win.
Sure, yeah. But I suppose if we're all in the same boat, it's still 20p in the pound, isn't it? You know, that's going to. But I'm sure we're governed by Lottery and Gaming Act and things like that on that, what they are. Just wanted to respond on all the. I think it'd be just interesting to bring those figures into a report, if you could, so we can see them. Whether it's part of it, it's probably good because this is the annual report. If you could note my other comments on sort of reporting in terms of percentage increases, that would be great. And I just wanted to really say, in a really, really difficult year, what a great set of accounts. You know, and under the strain, because I think one of the things it's very easy to forget that actually in this last year, we weren't just West Devon, but we were accounting for West Devon, typically accounting for Devon County Council and the police and fire as well, and doing all their collections. We're doing it nationally on behalf of government as well for what we had to do and act on. And I think that was a huge effort on all the staff. It's great to hear, Lisa. I mean, who's going to not losing a few grand? I mean, everyone's going to be down on their investment account, but it's really, really wise to be prudent with cash flow, especially in that time period. I mean, I remember shutting my office and think, oh my word, what's going to happen next? Are we going to get an order in the next week? You know, and we carried on and we've acted really prudently. And I also commend Jackson and his team as well for a comprehensive audit of what we've been doing. But thanks very much. I think I raised the points, and yes, I think it's been a very difficult year, and I'm pleased to see those opinions coming at the end. And there's nothing particularly concerning me. I mean, it was the property one that probably did back in March, April, but who's not going to expect some income reduction in that? But the fact the capital's gone up is great. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Just on the actuarial evaluation, I mean, obviously that's what we also raised at the last meeting, hence we got the Devon coming in at one of our meetings. But obviously with hindsight, we did actually have our actuarial evaluation last time, carried out at the right time. Been the year before or the year after, we've been in serious trouble. Councillor Paul.
Chairman, just a point of order. Just, I think we've strayed across into the next item without completing the auditor's item, although there's overlap in the two, so I can understand why that's doing. So just for clarity, I think when you feel it's appropriate, I think we do need to finish that item. But I would like to come back on a couple of points that Councillor Ridge has made, if I may. So in regards to the leisure item particularly, I also share Councillor Ridge's concern about that. And, I note what Jackson said, and I see why it wouldn't be appropriate for the auditor to do those things. But I think Paul's point is relevant because 435,000, and I back, I supported that, and I'm not knocking that decision, but I think obviously knowing what's coming to Hub this afternoon and some of the points that are being raised there, I do have concern as well. And I think as an audit committee, although a large part of our job is reviewing the financial reports and the mandatory things that we have to do for each part of the year, actually I think we do need to be proactive on things that potentially will concern us as well. And I think this item is one of them. I don't really know how to take that forward. I know it's coming to Hub, and maybe with Councillor Ridge's permission that, and with Chairman's permission, maybe we can just have a note of concern from us as a committee, because the issue is, are Fusion going to come back to us and ask for more money or delay repayments further, which obviously is a concern when the original contract, and I know COVID happened, I'm not disputing that, but it just looking at it objectively, when you look at the contract, it's pushed everything back, and for us to get the benefit, that has been pushed back further, with the potential of us having to invest even more to keep things going. Do you see the point? I'm sorry. So I am concerned about it.
Sorry to cross.
Just make sure we're not going to go into part two on this. I think that's, yeah.
It is a point of order against Councillor Bors. I think the thing making is just a qualified opinion on it, but I'm not talking about the intricacies. And I think Mrs. Buckles answered that, because actually you're working with the LGA. Grant Thornton are observing this from other councils' opinion, and I'm satisfied with their response. I think in terms of the remit of this audit committee, and I think, I'm afraid, Councillor, I think we are in danger of stepping onto the agenda of this afternoon with what you were saying, I'm afraid. So I'm more than happy to leave it there, because I think I've got the response I need from an audit's perspective. But maybe I think the only thing I would be potentially throwing out there is whether we act alone or with other councils or with our auditors. Do we need to review, or do we need a more forensic external review of what we're doing and planning to doing? And that's it, because otherwise I think we're debating their agenda. Okay, sorry to cut across you there, Councillor Ball.
That's fine.
My apologies, Chairman.
Yeah, I was going to say, actually, because the questions that were asked were actually put towards the auditor rather than the external auditor or anything else. And of course, we are going into Councillor Edmonds' briefing for this afternoon, really. So we'll leave that there. So those who are interested can go to the Hub meeting this afternoon. Yeah. Fine. Okay. So if everyone's content with that, for item number 6, we just have to note that. Thank you. So come on to the item number 7 is the audited annual statement of accounts for 2020-21, which in some ways should be quite straightforward, because we actually went through this in depth at the last meeting as a draft set, and we had a few tweaks to the annual statement. But just before I hand over to Councillor Edmonds, I just ask, if I could take the liberty to ask Jackson, how do we compare with our accounts? Looking at items 5, 6, and 7 on the agenda, how do we compare with other councils? Because you mentioned that you cover quite a few councils. How does our accounts as a whole cover? Are we average, above average, below average?
So I think in item number 5, I mentioned that in terms of the adjustments that we've noted, or any of the issues we've noted, they are pretty minor compared to other organisations that we may audit. So a good, clean bill of health on that front. I think the other thing which I didn't mention on item 5, but is pertinent to notice, I suppose, the timetable. So we're sat here 2nd of November, had to double check. The target date for all audited accounts for 2021 was the end of September. So clearly we're past that. By the end of September, and this may be drawn out in the report against item number 7, by the end of September, 9% of all local authorities had a fully completed audit and had published their set of accounts. So if it's 9%, then I would question whether that's really a realistic target, given nationally that's where we are. I think throughout Devon, none of the audited bodies had a set of accounts completed by the end of September. I'm aware of 1 or 2 more who've now subsequently had those signed off in the last week or so. So throughout Devon, you're one of the first to get the audits completed and published as well. So in that respect, in terms of timing and also issues identified, one of the first to be completed and very minor issues. So hopefully that gives you some assurance and some view against others.
That's very good, actually. I'm glad I asked the question, so well done to our finance team. The first. Yes, so Councillor Edmonds.
Thank you, Chair. Some of this I think we've already talked about this morning, but the Council Constitution delegates approval of the accounts to the Audit Committee. As we've heard, the external auditor completed their audit of the accounts in mid-October and have not identified any adjustments to the draft accounts considered by the Audit Committee in September. Grant Thornton, as we've heard, anticipate issuing an unqualified audit opinion for the 2020-21 Statement of Accounts following today's Audit Committee meeting. So recommendation 2 of this report recommends that members approve the audited Statement of Accounts for the financial year ended the 31st of March 2021. And the report further recommends that members approve the wording of the letter of representation, which is attached to the report, for signature by the Chair of Audit Committee and the Director of Strategic Finance. The Statement of Accounts is an essential feature of public accountability. It provides the stewardship report on the use of funds raised from the public. The closing of accounts is also important to the budgetary process, since it confirms the availability of reserves and balances for future use. The Annual Governance Statement, or AGS, for 2020-21 reflects the reporting requirements for delivering good governance in local government framework. And you will recall that this committee reviewed the draft AGS at the September meeting, and the grey shading on the updated version in Appendix C attached to today's report shows the changes made to the draft AGS following completion of the audit. The report also reflects on the extended time spent on the audit this year due to remote working and increased regulatory expectations and focus. To put this into context, the finance team have spent in the region of 440 hours on the West Devon audit this year. This is in addition to the time spent preparing the accounts between March and July. So I'd like to finish, Chair, by thanking Mrs. Buckle, Mrs. Henstock, and indeed all members of the finance team for their prudent management of the Council's finances, especially during such a challenging year. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. This report provides details of the outturn position for Treasury activities and highlights compliance with the Council's policies previously approved by members. As we've heard, income from investments this year was 36,782 against a budget of 105,321 at an average return of 0.10. I think I might just say that budget, Mrs. Bucker, was set, I believe, when interest rate and base rate was 0.5. We didn't reduce the budget last year, so I think that's why we're seeing such a wide variance there. Now, this reflects the fact that investments were kept very short term, as we've talked about, due to the pandemic and concerns over cash flow during a year of uncertainty around income streams. Notwithstanding this point, the 0.10 return outperformed the benchmark of 0.05. The table shown at 4.1 on page 235 of your agenda papers provides a snapshot of the Council's Treasury position as at the 31st of March 2021. Total Treasury investment stood at 18.971 million at the end of the financial year, with total external borrowing of 28.945 million, a net borrowing position of 9.974 million. The Council's capital expenditure plans are the key driver of Treasury management activity. The outputs of the capital expenditure plans are reflected in prudential indicators, and it is these indicators that assist members to overview and confirm capital expenditure plans. The Council's prudential indicators for 2020-21 are detailed in Appendix B of the report, which confirms that the Council operated within the indicators during the financial year. Finally, Chair, the report contains two recommendations. The first one approves the actual 2020-21 prudential and treasury indicators in this report, and the second one notes the annual Treasury Management report for 2020-21. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Do we have any questions? Councillor Yelland.
Thank you. It's just a query on page 236, which is regarding the investment in the South West Mutual Bank. And I understand the reasons why things haven't progressed as far and as fast as they could have done. But are you still confident that this is a sound investment? Thank you.
I attended the AGM of the bank. I'm not sure I can sit here and convince myself or you that you know where the bank is or where it's going. They have hugely cut their costs. They are attempting to raise further monies, and you know that is the challenge. They certainly need to be able to do that to ensure they continue. They have also gone through a difficult time around how the bank should be structured as well. But I think they're well on the way to resolving that now. So I think it's all about raising additional finance to continue with the project. But of course, I think it's very difficult to say with any certainty what the future holds for them. But clearly, from that meeting and the directors, the people involved are still incredibly passionate and determined to make this a success. I don't know if Lisa has anything to add to that.
I think that's a really good summary, Chairman. I don't really have anything to add, and yeah, that's where I think we are really. I mean, they did cut their costs. They put their staff on furlough during the pandemic. They took legal advice on some of the issues that they were facing. So yeah, I think they've done everything that they could really to try and get the bank up and running. But yeah, their formal license application will still take another 12 months. So yeah, it's in the longer term. Thank you.
Can I just add one further point that, and Mrs. Bucker will probably confirm this, but I think it's fair to say that you raised a provision against our contribution in any case. So as far as that's concerned, that is already out of the accounts. But obviously, we very much hope that the bank does continue and does come to fruition, because I think, we can all see there is a real need. And since we made that investment, I wouldn't like to guess how many further bank closures we've seen in our borough. So very much hope that they are able to work through this challenging time and deliver on their proposition.
Thank you.
Could I follow up on that? I mean, have they got any financial statements?
They do produce financial statements, yeah.
Do we not want to see them, really?
I could probably, I'm sure I could arrange for them to be circulated to members.
Okay, it was just, yeah. I mean, it's difficult circumstances, difficult time. I think there were wider, more than commercial aspects for investing in this in terms of support and service. But yes, I just hope it's probably one of those things. It's probably a bit like Fusion. We just hope they stay afloat for the benefit of all of us. Thanks.
And also, as Councillor Edmonds attended that AGM, I think if there was any major concerns about the audit of the annual account, you'd have probably raised them at the time. There'd be something that you mentioned, so you haven't said anything, so we assume they're okay. Thank you. So if nobody has any other questions, we've got two recommendations on page 231 of the agenda. One, to approve the actual 2020-21 Prudential and Treasury indicators in this report, and two, to note the annual Treasury Management report for 2020-21. Is everyone happy that we do that? Okay. Thank you. Move on to item number 9, which is the Audit Committee Work Programme, found on page 255. Does anybody have any comments on that? Pauline, you're about to say something, are you?
Yes, Chair. Thank you. It says on the work plan December date to be confirmed, so we were going to try and set a provisional date that would be convenient for members. We had a look at the member diary, and the provisional date is the 7th of December at 9:30 in the morning, if that suits everybody. That's the morning of Hub Committee, so we're looking at a 9:30 start, if that's convenient for members. Yeah. Apologies, I'm skipping ahead.
How he remembers all these figures off the top of his head, and it just hit me. I was thinking this earlier on in our chairman's briefing, but then actually during this meeting, Councillor Bulls gave him a curveball and asked him a question he hadn't asked in the previous meeting, and I noticed he came straight in with the answer of 97.3%. I thought that's quite impressive going through, and I thought, yes, it's right, and I think just to retain all that information just goes to show that the actual work that you do, Councillor Edmonds, on behalf of this council, and certainly your role on the hub. So I'd just like to thank you on behalf of the audit committee for doing that. Yeah, it's well appreciated, because I just think we all go through these accounts and trying to remember, but how you remember all these figures so passionately as well, actually. Yeah. Well, I know it's your background as well, finance. No, let's say this is the only place. This is the only committee you're safe in, actually, because actually we like audits. Just like thank obviously the audit, the finance team for once again providing us with a good set of accounts, and thank you, Jackson Murray, for coming down